Have you ever done something on a wedding day that you knew was totally outside of your scope of services, but you did it anyway? Or maybe you've seen a planner or coordinator doing something that you didn't think was part of their offerings, and you wondered, I wonder why they're doing that, or you just weren't sure what was going on. I want to have a conversation today about things that wedding planners should be doing and things they should not be doing on wedding days specifically. So let's jump in and get right to it. Hey there, and welcome to the Event Crushed podcast. Each week, we'll be chatting about all things wedding industry, entrepreneurship, and how to crush it in life and business. I'm so glad you're here. Now, let's dive into this week's episode. Well, hey there, and welcome to the Event Crushed podcast. I'm your host, Becky Hart, and I'm excited to be back here again today, just chatting with you about I think it's a fun topic. It's something that I have a lot of personal experience in, so a lot of what I'm going to be sharing is based off of my own personal experience as a wedding planner and coordinator. So really, we're going to be chatting about the things that I've seen planners doing on wedding days that ultimately they should not be doing. And either other wedding professionals should be doing those things, or it's just outside of the scope of services that we should be providing. And then I'm also going to talk about, I'm actually going to lead with things that wedding planners and coordinators should be doing on wedding days. There's definitely room for conversation around all of this. I am just one person and one opinion. So if you disagree with something, if you're like, no, I'm a planner and I do this all the time and it works, great for me, or if you see something on the list of what planners should be doing and you're like, no, I do not think that coordinators should be doing that, please reach out to me. Let's chat about it. Like I said, I'm just one perspective and I love hearing other perspectives on this topic and all topics. I am super open to any thoughts that anyone has and that anyone wants to share on any episode. So never hesitate to reach out to me with any ideas or thoughts that you have. And I love to just keep the conversation going. It's fun to talk to myself and share my thoughts and ideas, but it's even more fun to chat and have a real conversation with other people. So that's why I am so excited to be bringing guests on. So I have 4 interviews scheduled currently and more in the works. So those will be coming down the pipeline soon, and you won't just have to listen to me jabber on anymore. There'll be some really great voices to add to the conversation as well. So that will be coming soon. But in the meantime, today we're going to be chatting about things that wedding planners and coordinators should be doing on wedding days and things they should not be doing. And this is really specific to the wedding day itself. We can have a whole other conversation about what planners and coordinators should be doing throughout the process. But today we are just focusing on the wedding day itself. So of course, there's the very obvious coordination of the wedding day. Yes, I'm not going to get into super specifics on all of it. But these are the things that came to mind when I'm thinking, okay, this is what the coordinator should be handling. And if you're not doing these things, you might want to ask yourself, why? So this episode is specific to wedding planners. However, I do think there's a lot of value to be found from all types of wedding pros in this, because we all work with wedding planners and coordinators. And so understanding what their role is and what their role isn't, I think is really important. So I do, even though this, has planner in the title, I still think that other wedding pros should give it a listen. I think it will still be valuable to you. So I'm going to start with things wedding planners and coordinators should be doing on a wedding day. We'll start on a positive note, and then we'll end the episode with what I think they should not be doing. Okay, and I might jump around a little bit here. The first thing is something that this might be a little more unexpected or not. This is a less obvious one, but it's something that is, to me, super important. And I don't see a lot of planners and coordinators doing this. And ever since I started sharing about this on Instagram, I've been like petitioning for other planners to do this. So this first one is providing a vendor appreciation station. So what that looks like is bringing bottled water, maybe LaCroix, sparkling water, and snacks, and just maybe a cute little sign, setting up a little station in wherever the vendors hang out. So whether there's like a vendor tent or a back room or wherever it is, just having this little snack station available with a variety of snacks. So we usually do like beef jerky, fruit snacks, granola bars. I try to always have a variety of options that are, gluten-free and then dairy-free, all the things, because there's a lot of food allergies these days. So I try to provide something for everybody. I just make sure that it's all like individually packaged. But every time I do this, which is at every wedding that I do, and I've been doing this for years, vendors comment about how great it is and how appreciated it is and how they never see this from other, planners or vendors. And so it's just made me realize, and it just reiterates the importance of taking care of our vendors, because yes, we're there for our clients, and obviously we're taking great care of our clients, but our vendor partners are the ones who are going to be referring business to us in the future, hopefully. And the more we take care of them and nurture that relationship, the higher our chances, of those referrals happening are. So why wouldn't we take every opportunity to take care of those vendors and go above and beyond for them? And if it means spending $50 or $75, whatever, and running to the store before the wedding day to provide this little snack basket, it's so worth it. And I'm telling you, the feedback that I get whenever we have that is just awesome, but also like makes me sad, because I'm just bummed out that more people aren't doing that. And I even think it doesn't necessarily need to be the planner. Like a venue could set up a vendor appreciation station in their space. So really, I think of the planner or the venue, to me, makes the most sense. But either way, I just think it's a great way to go above and beyond for your vendor partners and to just reiterate how important they are, because obviously we're all in it together on a wedding day. If the photographer's not there, that's a huge problem. If the coordinator's not there, that's a huge problem. If the caterer's not there, that's a huge problem. If the officiant's not there, it's a huge problem. We are all essential to the success of the wedding day. And it's just so important that we all, treat each other in such a way and show each other how valuable each of us are. So this is just one way that I like to do that. There's other ways for sure, but this is something that I started doing several years ago and just never looked back, because it's super fun and I love snacks and I love treats. So if I'm going to bring them for myself and my team, why wouldn't I spread that love to the rest of the vendor team? So that's my first tip, is just providing a vendor appreciation station. It's a mouthful. For your vendor team on the wedding day. Okay. So number 2 that I think wedding planners should be doing on wedding days is, this is much more of an obvious one, but acting as the point person between the couple and all of the vendors. So the coordinator is the one usually that on site first, that is greeting all of the vendors when they arrive. They're showing them where to set up. They are answering any questions. They're showing the DJ where the power is. They're getting an extra table for the caterer, everything like that. And of course, they're going to have, or at least I like to have, printed timelines that I can distribute to the vendors, even though, of course, they've all been emailed the timeline in advance. And some of them like to bring their own version or their own copy to the wedding. I like to bring printed copies as well, just in case, to make sure that everybody has one, because we've all been there when a vendor forgot a timeline and they don't have it on their phone. So just having those as backup at the very least is very helpful. So yeah, the wedding coordinator is the one just working logistics with all of the vendors and making sure that they have everything they need, whether that's like oh my gosh, we need an extension cord because, the outlet is too far away for the DJ. So getting that from the venue, things like that. That is a big part of what we do as coordinators, just kind of dealing with all those little issues that arise and making sure that our clients are unaware of anything that comes up. So putting out those hopefully little fires, of course, those can turn into big things, but if we deal with it when it's small, then hopefully our clients never have any idea and we can just deal with it on the back end and not stress our clients out. So yeah, I think that's pretty clear. Okay, so number 3, another fairly obvious one. I'm assuming that most coordinators do this. And that is having a fully stocked emergency kit for the day that we bring on site to the wedding that has everything we might need for any situation that might arise. Like I mentioned, those little fires that can come up, having just all the materials and supplies to mitigate anything that arises. So, scissors to cut off extra threads that are coming off of the linen or a bridesmaid dress, to cut ribbon, to tie, to cover something up, safety pins to hold the bridesmaid's dress together, a first aid kit for when a groomsman cuts himself doing something, a steamer to get wrinkles out of any linens or dresses, extra ribbon. I like to bring a styling kit with a ring box and silk ribbon and vintage stamps and ring dish, things like that the photographer, if they don't have one, they can utilize those things in any flat lay styling. And then a tool kit with a hammer and, nails and screwdrivers, maybe a drill, all those kind of things, command strips, anything to attach things, wire. I have a huge list of what we include in our emergency kit. If you want a copy of it, I'm more than happy to send it to you. Shoot me an email, becky@eventcrush.com, or reach out on Instagram and I can send you the list of what we include in our emergency kit. Lots of things to just help the day go as smoothly as possible. Okay, moving on to number 4 for the coordinator or planner to do on the wedding day. And that is just ensuring that all the details are perfectly placed and execute any finishing touches. So setting up the guest book table, the escort card table or display, any signage, double checking all the place settings and making sure that the, flatware is in the right order and facing the correct way and that the spacing is correct. This is something that I found myself very particular about over the years. And I try really hard to make sure that our, place settings look really nice and that they're the correct distance from the edge of the table and that the knives are facing in or the knife blade is facing in towards the plate and that the napkins are all even and matching. I think it just goes a long way to take care of all those little details so that when our clients, get those photos back and they're looking, everything just looks beautiful. And it's just that attention to detail that I think really sets planners and coordinators apart. And of course, that also gets into design and all of that. And not all planners are designers. Not all coordinators are designers. So that's a whole other conversation that we can have at some point. But at any rate, I think it is our job as a whole to go through, the reception space and make sure everything is as it should be and double checking. Big time double checker. I'll check it and it'll look fine. And then I do a lot of outdoor weddings. So then maybe the wind blows and then, it's not fine anymore. So I'm going back and I'm double checking it again. And, we're lighting candles. We're lighting them again when the wind blows them out. All of those finishing touches, that is really on us. So I think that is a big part of what we do is just double checking those details, making sure everything is placed exactly where it should be and that nothing's out of place. Okay, the next one that I have is delegating tasks to assistants and interns. So as a planner or coordinator, hopefully we're not showing up on the wedding day by ourselves. Hopefully we have a team with us of some kind, whether that's just one assistant or however big your team is. I just know we can't do it on our own and we should have at least at the very minimum depending on the size of the wedding, one other person with us. We should never be trying to do it ourselves. And we can obviously only be in one place at a time. So being able to delegate tasks to our other team members is extremely important. Even if it's a tiny wedding. I mean, we had a wedding last year that had 12 people at it, but I still had my assistant with me all day because, I need to take breaks at some point. And I don't want to, leave things unattended. That wedding, even though it was only 12 people, it was at a hotel in 2 different locations in the hotel. And so having my assistant be at the ceremony while I'm running down to check on the reception is just extremely important to have another set of hands. And then, as we're transitioning flowers over and things like that, it's just essential to have more than just yourself on a wedding day. So being able to delegate those tasks to your team and not taking it all upon yourself, because if we're trying to do everything, that's not going to go super well because we can only do so much. Like I said, we only have 2 hands. We're only one person. So we need to have a team that can help us get everything done that we need to get done. Okay, next one. This is number 6. I haven't been doing a very good job of counting these out, but this is number 6. And this is an important one. I think that this is a big part of, as a coordinator, being flexible and basically just being willing to jump in wherever we are needed. And there's definitely boundaries with that. And that's where we will come back to when I'm discussing what wedding planners shouldn't be doing. Or for now, I'm going to talk about some ways in which we do jump in. And I think it can be very helpful. And maybe there are things we're not doing every single wedding, but the fact that we are there and available to do them, I think is very helpful to the rest of the vendor team. So an example of this is pinning on boutonnieres. Now, I'm not a florist, but I've pinned on so many boutonnieres. And I have had a florist show me the correct way to pin on a boutonniere where they will stay and where it just feels super sturdy. Because I've done it many different ways over the years, but probably 3 years ago, a florist showed me a way to do it with 2 pins that just, in my opinion, is the best way to do it. So now that I know that method, I'm more than happy to help pin on boutonnieres because I want them to stay. I want them to look good in photos. Nothing is worse than seeing the photos of the groomsmen and their, especially, or the groom, and their boutonnieres were flopping around and falling off. I mean, that's so sad. So we want to avoid that. So I am more than happy to help jump in and pin on boutonnieres, especially if it's a big wedding party and there's lots of groomsmen. You can bet that I will be there pinning on those boutonnieres. And there are situations, and I love it, when the florist is super hands-on and they're on site and they're pinning them all on. And trust me, I appreciate that so much, but I also know that's not always possible. And so I'm more than happy to do that. So that's an example of something that isn't necessarily in my job description. Like, I'm not going to go around telling everybody that I am a professional boutonniere pinner honor, but I will do it and I will be happy to do it. Another example is, let's say the groom's suit lost a button and I have a sewing kit. So I'm going to, as quickly as I can, or I'm going to have my assistant sew that button back on and get him back in that suit jacket, because that's something that buttons come off all the time on all kinds of things. And we have had to use our sewing kit so many times over the years. So being able and willing to do that. Now, I'm not a seamstress either, but I know how to use a needle and thread, and I will gladly sew on that button because that's important. So another one is bustling the bride's dress, or at least trying to help with that. All bustles are different. So it is really important that our clients and brides know how to bustle their dress and that they have shown someone how to do it. And this is something that comes up in the planning process that hopefully you're educating your couples on what to do. So if they can bring their mom or bridesmaid, maid of honor to their dress appointment with them, and they can see and experience the bustle and know exactly how to do it. So on the wedding day, there's no issues, but that doesn't always happen. Or sometimes they forget or, what have you. So being able to jump in and get the bride's dress bustled is super helpful and will be much appreciated on all accounts. One other thing that I think is an example of where we can jump in just to help out if needed is helping track down a family member for photos. Maybe the bride really wanted this picture with her uncle during the reception and he's wandered off somewhere, he's off playing cornhole and nobody can find him or, so I will myself or send my assistant to go track down that family member. But I will say I have some other thoughts on family photos and wedding party photos that I will share in a little bit, but I think it's fine to, track down a family member and help out in that way. I am more than happy to do that. So in the same way that we talked about taking care of our vendor partners, it's equally important to, of course, take care of our couples and our clients. So making sure that they're eating dinner, that they get to actually sit down and enjoy a meal together. We all know how common it is for the couple to just, they have people coming up to them constantly and it's easy for them to sit down, have a couple bites, and then they're up and they're greeting their guests. So just ensuring that they get that time to enjoy together and to actually eat their meal. I always just really try to make sure my couples get that time. Also, just making sure that they're hydrated, that they have plenty of water, that they, if they need a drink, that they have a drink. Making sure, because especially when they're off doing photos during the cocktail hour, they might not be around for appetizers. So setting aside a plate of appetizers for them so that they can enjoy them too when they come back. And same with dessert. Maybe they didn't get to try all the dessert. So putting together a plate of dessert items for them that they can take home and enjoy later that night or the next day is something I always try to do as well. So just taking care of them and making sure that they have everything they need at all times, especially in the way of food and drink, because we all know how important that is. Two more things to share for this first section. The next one is working closely with the DJ or band or MC. As coordinators and planners, usually the DJ or the MC is the one that we're working with most closely throughout the day. We're checking in with them. We're making, we're letting them know if we're behind or ahead of schedule. That communication is just consistently happening throughout the wedding. There is never long periods of time where I'm not connecting with them just because I need to check in with them. I need to check in with my couple, before we do first dance or things like that. I'm checking with my couple if they're ready. And then I'm letting the DJ or MC or band know, hey, they're not quite ready yet. They need a few more minutes. Or, yeah, we're good to go. Let's do it after this song. Things like that. So it's just a constant flow of communication throughout the day. And really, they are the one that we are working with most closely. And so making sure that, we have a great relationship with the DJ and that we're communicating with them and they're communicating with us. And there's just a really good back and forth flow is very important, because without that, the day can kind of get derailed, unfortunately. So that's a huge part of what we do. Okay, so now I am going to move on to things that I really don't think wedding planners and coordinators should be doing on a wedding day. And I know all of this from personal experience, at least most of it. There might be one or two things that I have not experienced, but as a whole, these are things that I have done before. And that's why I am here to tell you that we should not be doing them. So some of them, again, might be obvious. Some of them might not as much. So I'm just going to go through. There's 7 on my list of things not to do. Probably a lot of us have done these at some point or another. I definitely, in my first years of business, ran into a lot of these. And they were things that I probably told the client that I wouldn't do, or, had verbally said, oh yeah, I don't do that, but then found myself doing it on the wedding day. And so I want to avoid all of that for you. So having these things. Well, we'll talk about at the end. We'll talk about at the end how to avoid getting yourself into a situation where you find yourself doing these things on wedding days. So the first one is bussing tables. So that's not a job for a planner or a coordinator. We shouldn't be doing that. That's either the caterer's job, or if it's not a full service caterer, the client can have a busing station set up and the client or the guests can self-bus if needed, or there can be an additional staffing team that's hired to do the busing and serving and any of that. So I just hear too often of stories where planners get wrangled into busing tables. And I know early on, I definitely was in the same boat and had that happen multiple times. But now I'm able to prevent that, thankfully. So I will share a little more at the end of this segment about how I avoid that. But yeah, we should not be dealing with dirty dishes and all of that. And like I said, I'm sure we've all been there, but there's ways to avoid that for sure. Another one that planners and coordinators should not be doing is hanging lights or really any decor that requires a 6-foot ladder, anything above like a step stool, I would say. And that's for liability reasons. And I can also share a really not fun story of the one time, the very early on in my career. I think it was my first or second wedding season where I had paying clients, and I had agreed to help set up a bunch of decor at a community center just for the reception. The couple had a ceremony offsite, and so I was just hired to basically decorate the reception space and then coordinate the reception. And they had rented all kinds of decor from a local company, but it was just a drop-off situation. So they had rented these cafe lights, and they wanted them strung all over the ceiling of this community center. And beforehand, during our walkthrough, the community center had told me that they had these hooks that I could use on the ceiling and on the side of the walls. And so they were like, yeah, you can use those hooks to hook the lights into. That's fine. So on the wedding day, I find myself on a very tall ladder with these strands of lights, stringing them all across the ceiling. And we got them all up and it looked great. And I was like, all right, that wasn't so bad. You know, we did it. Everything looks good. And then during dinner, I hear this loud crash. And I realize that one of the light strands has fallen down onto a table of guests while they were eating dinner. And thankfully, you know, nobody was hurt. No glass broke or anything, but it made a big old mess of their table. Everybody had to get up. We had to like remove the linen. Water had spilled all over. I mean, it was a big mess. And I will never forget that. I mean, that was like one of the first, you know, major mistakes that I made in my career where I was like, oh my gosh, like that was my fault. And basically what happened was the hook came out of the wall, or it came undone, basically, that they had told me that I could hang it on. But the fact that I put myself in that position in the first place, when I am not a lighting company, I don't have experience in lighting and proper ways of doing all of that. I put myself in that position that could have been a lot worse. I mean, people could have gotten hurt, glass could have broken, it could have been a lot worse. So thankfully, I'm lucky that it happened the way it did, and it taught me a really big lesson. And now I will never do anything like that again because I know what can happen and it is not worth the risk. So that is number 2. We should not be hanging anything up high, standing on ladders, hanging decor, especially lights, anything like that. Okay, the next one, which probably a lot of you know this, but maybe you found yourself doing it anyway. And that is handling any type of food, beverage, or alcohol. So the reasons for this, I mean, there's many, but to handle any food, you have to have a food handler's permit. So if you don't have a food handler's permit, you definitely should not be touching any food. If you do have a food handler's permit, I mean, you can decide for yourself, because you would need to make sure you and your team and anyone that's handling food has that appropriate permit. I do have one. So technically, I'm physically able to do that. However, that's outside of the scope of my services, and I don't do that generally unless it's like a unique situation. To handle any alcohol, you have to have an OLCC license. So if you and your team have that, great. If not, you should not be touching or dealing with any alcohol, even opening, wine bottles, that kind of thing. And hopefully they have a full service bartender. But as a whole, we should not be handling any of that. Cutting the cake, I've been asked, and I was asked early on to, can you cut my wedding cake? No, I cannot cut your wedding cake. I'm not a baker. I don't know the exact science of cutting a wedding cake, because there is a very specific way that it is to be done so that there's less waste. If you don't know what you're doing, there will be a ton of waste. And that also goes into transporting things like wedding cake. I've had couples ask if I can pick up their wedding cake on the way. I have picked up pies and that kind of thing in the past, but now that's just on my list of things that we will not do, because there's so much liability. What happens if you get in a car accident on the way to the wedding and their wedding cake goes flying into your windshield and is ruined? That's now on you. Why would you want to take that responsibility upon yourself? Because you can be blamed. Oh my gosh, I ruined their wedding cake. Hopefully, we hope that our couples and our clients would be understanding in that situation. Oh my gosh, you got in a car accident. Are you okay? I'm so sorry. But the second that they hear you're okay, they're going to be thinking about their wedding cake and how it's ruined. And it's just not something that we want to risk. So at all costs, do not transport things for couples. It's not worth it. I promise you. Okay, number 5 that planners should not be doing is acting as a DJ or an MC, dealing with any music, starting, stopping songs, getting on a microphone. I was, in another life, I was a DJ at a roller skating rink. That's actually how I met my husband. And I loved that. It was so much fun. I loved being on the microphone and playing red light, green light with the kids and picking all my favorite songs to play and begrudgingly playing the songs that the kids wanted because it was never what I wanted. I had so much fun being a DJ, but a roller rink DJ and a wedding DJ are not the same thing. So I can think of an instance very early on. It was a really small coast wedding, and they were like, can you just make a couple of announcements? So I'm like, sure, I could do that. But yeah, after that, it's like, never again. I am not a DJ, and that's not why you hired me. So we just need to have the appropriate vendors doing the appropriate vendor jobs. That's how I feel about that. There's a lot that can go wrong. I'm not a sound tech. I've seen some crazy things happen, even from a professional DJ, with music going wrong and things going wrong. And I don't want that responsibility on me. I had a DJ many years ago, professional DJ, great DJ. The song that the couple had chosen for the bride's entrance, I forget what exactly happened, but basically the song that they had chosen, he could only get it on his phone, and everything else was on the computer, but he had this one song on his phone. And I guess he forgot to turn his phone on airplane mode. And so as the bride and her dad are walking down the aisle, his phone rings. And I just remember being like, oh my gosh, what is happening? And yeah, it was wild. So crazy things can happen even to actual DJs. I don't want to think about what can happen in the hands of an untrained DJ. I don't want to be responsible for stopping and starting the ceremony music and possibly messing it up. That's such an important moment in our clients' lives. I just do not want to risk having anything negative happen there. So that's a big part of why I will not be your DJ. I will not be your MC. Okay. Another one. I have two more. Arranging flowers. Unless you are, I know there are planner teams out there that also have a florist division. So that's different. But otherwise, we should not be arranging flowers. I know some couples want to DIY their flowers, and so they might ask you if you can just pop some blooms into some bud vases, but it always becomes so much more than that. It's never that simple, and that can be very time consuming, especially when they're just dropping off flowers, from Trader Joe's, and they need to be opened, and their stems need to be cut, and they need to be arranged. It can become so time consuming, and we don't have time for that on a wedding day when we're already managing so many other details and elements. We can't just also be arranging flowers as well. So hopefully our couples are hiring a professional florist for that. And if not, they need to have the flowers prearranged by somebody. And I'm happy to put it on the table. I will stick it on the table where it goes, but I'm not going to be arranging the flowers. So that's one that I've, definitely had personal experience with over the years as well. And yeah, I'm not a florist. I thought at one point that I was going to be a florist. I actually took a flower arranging course, and it was super fun. And I was like, I can do this. And I ordered some wholesale flowers just to play with, and I made a centerpiece, and I tried to make a bridal bouquet, and I quickly realized, oh my gosh, this is not for me. It's so much work, and it's so expensive. And if you don't know how to handle flowers properly, they can be really finicky and they can die. That's just a big responsibility that I was not willing to take upon myself. So I decided, you know what? I am going to leave that to the professionals. I also, at one point, this is just story time today, apparently, but before I got into wedding planning, I dabbled in photography and wedding photography. I shot a couple of weddings. I shot a bunch of engagement sessions, maternity sessions, couple photos, all kinds of things like that. I loved photography for many years, actually. And then, ultimately, again, decided that it wasn't for me. And that was just before I fell in love with wedding and event planning. So my path obviously took a different direction, but having those experiences, I think, are awesome because I've been in a photographer's shoes. I've shot a wedding. I know the pressure, and I know all the different balls that are in the air, and I know what it takes to do it. So I think it's good to have those experiences. If you've worked on a catering team, I was a banquet server at the Hilton for about a year. And so, I served meals at weddings, and I've experienced that side of things. So the more well-rounded and the more experiences you have in other industries, all of that can help you as a planner. And just to be in other people's shoes, I think is so helpful and can really just help you have a better understanding and appreciation for the rest of the vendor team. So anyways, that was a bit of a tangent, but just made me think of that. Okay, so this last one, I mentioned that I would come back to this before, and it has to do with photography and the family photos and all of that, because I've seen it said both ways. And this is how I personally feel, but I don't think that the planner or coordinator should be wrangling all the family members and getting everybody together for photos. I think either the photographer should have an assistant or a second shooter that is helping with that, or the family designates a person or a couple people who are in charge of making sure that everybody's ready for photos. And there's ways to mitigate this too. What I always recommend is having all the family photos taking place right after the ceremony. And so the couple gets married, they come down the aisle, the wedding party goes down, and then the officiant says, hey, we're going to do family photos. So any immediate family, stay here, and we're going to do the photos right here. Don't go off to the cocktail hour yet. you'll be able to soon, but for right now, we need you to stay here and do photos. And that way we're not losing people. They're not going to the bar. They're just there where we need them. And so it's not a huge ordeal to have to wrangle people. But there are times, of course, when, a grandpa runs off or we lose people. And so having somebody to help get those people, like I mentioned earlier, if one person's missing, I'm more than happy to go look for that person or to send my assistant to do that. But as a whole, we have so many other things going on during the day. And a lot of times during cocktail hour, we're kind of flipping things. We're helping move flowers from the ceremony to the reception. We're making sure everything in the reception is ready. We're lighting candles in preparation for dinner. So we might not be able and available to wrangle a whole bunch of family members. And so that's my personal thoughts. I don't think that we should be the one doing that, but I have read other people's views, and I know some planners do offer that as part of their services. So I think it just varies from company to company. And that's the thing with all of this is how I run my company, but you might run your company very differently and you might offer completely different services, and that's totally fine. And there's no clear cut right or wrong way. I mean, I feel strongly there are certain things that I'm like, this is a no. But then there's some things I'm like, if you want to do that, that's fine. If the planner wants to wrangle family members, like that's awesome. I have no problem with that. I just know that's not something that I personally want to spend time during the wedding doing. So those are my thoughts on all of that. But let's talk a little bit about how we can avoid those things that you might have been wrangled into in the past, or you might have found yourself doing in the past, even though it's outside of your scope of service. So the main two things are contract and communication. So having outlined in your contract what is included in your services, of course, and then also having a section of what is not included in your services. So outlining things like like in ours, we don't bus tables. We don't remove garbage. We don't haul garbage out of the venue. We don't touch any food or alcohol. Things like that. We don't transport food. So having that outlined right there in your contract for your clients to see, so there are no surprises on the wedding day and you're not getting asked these things on the wedding day. And secondly, I mean, obviously the contract ties into communication, but in case they're not reading it word for word, you can let them know, hey, just a couple things we wanted to note on the contract. We don't do X, Y, and Z. But of course, here's all the things that we do, that we do offer. So just making it really clear up front so that there's no surprises. And then to add to that, we also have a wedding day surprises document that we have our couples review in advance. And it basically lists out things that are outside of our scope of services that if it comes up on the wedding day and we're being asked to do those things, well, here's how much it costs. So if we are asked to bus the tables on the wedding day, even though we were clear we don't bus tables, well, it's going to be XYZ amount per table or however you want to charge for that. But they look that over and they sign that in advance. And so if stuff comes up, okay, great. Everyone's on the same page and we all know how we're going to move forward with it. So that's how I deal with that. But I just would recommend making it as clear as possible to your clients what you provide, but then what you do not provide and what is outside of the scope of services. And the clearer things are, the less potential issues will arise on the wedding day. And that goes with not just your couple, but the vendors, with everybody. The clearer you are throughout the process in your communication of what your role is and what the vendor's expectations are, the better the day will go as a whole. So those are my thoughts on what planners and coordinators should be doing and should not be doing on a wedding day. So I would love to hear if you agreed or disagreed or have other things to add to the list. This is not an exhaustive list, so I'm sure there's other things that I missed too, but I would love to hear from you. So as always, you can shoot me an email or reach out on Instagram at Event Crush. And if you have listened to the first 5 episodes of this show, thank you so much. If you would be willing to leave a rating or a review, if you want to be the first one to review my podcast, that would be the coolest thing ever. I know I have a couple of 5-star ratings, but I don't have any official reviews as of today. So if you are up for it, just know that it would mean the world to me, and you'd be the coolest person ever in my eyes if you want to be the first one to leave a review. All right. Well, I appreciate you being here as always, and I hope you have a wonderful weekend, and we'll talk to you next time.